I mean, and that's a very fair point. I mean, putting Kim Potter in jail does not necessarily get it does not necessarily get the family of Daunte Wright anything back, but a civil case to a certain extent does, where, you know, although it's not the kind of situation, or it's not something that can ever replace a human being in your life, right? Like for his poor mother, you know, she although the cross-examination of her by Earl Grey was actually very masterful. He did a fantastic job. At the same time, she's still a grieving mother, and I still very much feel for her, of course. So, you know, for someone like her, she has lost one of her sons through this whole case. And financial compensation is never going to bring him back, but it may help to sort of, I don't know, dim the sting a little bit to a certain extent. You know, like it's the only way that our civil justice system really knows how to compensate people for you know, for loss of life in these kinds of cases.
And arguably, with respect to the police department, if they're hit with this sort of civil damage, they change their training policies to make it less likely that something like this will happen again in the future. So again, that's another basis to say that civil penalties against both Kim and the state, which, let's face it, it'll be picked up by the government. They're the ones on the paying the tab. That's appropriate, and that's a way to sort of get government to make sure that they're taking steps so that this sort of negligence does not happen again. Because nobody in hell wants to see another situation like this unfold again in the future.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But despite the fact of how we feel about it, and you know, just to be clear, you know, my stance has always been, we can feel like a situation is morally horrible, right? It's ethically horrible. It makes us feel absolutely horrible. But we have to separate our feelings from the facts and the law. Right. And the facts of the law say this is not an appropriate punishment under the law. And I think Joe is absolutely right, and Alita's exactly right about civil and the civil liability here. And also, you got to understand that, you know, we can feel bad for him on one hand, but at the same time, civil liability has something called comparative negligence. We're going to take into account the fact that he was high, that he was resisting arrest, that he had a warrant out for his arrest, right? That he did not have to do what he did in that action, right? If he just said, okay, yeah, I'm going with the cops, he would still be alive today, right? So that's something you factor in a civil case, and you portion that out. Right? If it's not something that's settled. And by the way, I think they would settle this. Like, as a person who's represented cities, they're settling this bad boy. They're not taking this to trial.
I think so, for sure.